Welcome everyone to GamerMeld. This is going to be the last talking head video for quite a while, as I'm actually going to be getting back to normal videos Monday. In the meantime, we've got some big news today, actually a lot of news, starting with the system requirements of Cyberpunk 2077, RX 6000 stock information, the 3060 Ti gets listed on multiple retailers, new performance, next-gen mobile Ryzen 5000 benchmarks, SAM support on 400 series boards, crypto miners are buying all the RTX 3000 GPUs, and Nvidia is ditching Intel. So yeah, let's just get right to it. Starting things off, like I said, we have the system requirements for Cyberpunk 2077. Now, this is a little old at this point, but I did really want to go over it. For one, you can see that minimum requirement 1080p, we have the AMD FX 8310 or an Intel i5 3570K. So it definitely does go back fairly well. Also, 8 GB of memory, as well as a 470 and 780, which does make it feel like things like the 470, 590, things like that are getting a bit old at this point, simply because they're way lower than they used to be, maybe even a year ago. Either way, you can definitely tell that this is fairly demanding. They actually suggest either a 2080 Super or 3070 for 4K, or the Radeon RX 6800 XT. For 1440p, we have the 2060 or 5700 XT. Now, when we move over to ray tracing, you'll notice one thing fairly quickly. None of AMD's newest cards are listed here. This is actually nothing but Nvidia cards. And the reason for that is because CD Projekt Red has actually confirmed that unfortunately, even though it uses the Microsoft DXR API, which tells me that they likely have to do at least a little bit more to get it to work on either Nvidia or AMD's RX 6000 series cards, support for the 6000 series is not coming at launch. With that said, that's only at launch. They will be adding support later, and they are apparently working with AMD to introduce the feature. Still, that is something to think about when it releases on December 10th, and I will say that it definitely seems like it absolutely will be releasing. I know someone from the company was speaking with investors not long ago, and they effectively confirmed definitively that December 10th will be the launch date. Of course, understandably, you likely do have some apprehension, and I really would too, until that day actually comes and it is released. Next up for today, this is actually something that I went over during the RX 6000, the custom RX 6000 launch stream, but it's something that I really am going to reiterate here. You can see ProShop, we've discussed them before. They're one of the only ones who's actually explained how many orders of graphics cards they've gotten, how many they requested, and all of that, and as you can see, it is really bad. You can see that they've requested hundreds and hundreds, or they've ordered hundreds of cards from third-party manufacturers. They have basically got none that are incoming. This is the 6800 XT, and they've only supposedly received 25, although it is kind of odd that they didn't order any of these, but they did get them. Then again, this is the reference design, so that is likely why, but basically third-party cards, they got none. And this rings true for the 6800 non-XT as well. These are the reference design, they got 100, got no custom cards. Basically, things are really bad when it comes to AMD's RX 6000 launch, and I don't know, like I said, week after week, they are supposed to be getting more. I will also have links in the description to those cards. Definitely make sure to check those out. Those are affiliate links, and they help the channel out. And next up for today, well, speaking of cards that you likely won't be able to purchase for quite a long time, the 3060 Ti has been listed on multiple European retailers. You can see we have the Gigabyte 3060 Ti Eagle, Eagle Overclock, Gaming Overclock, and Aorus Master. Then we have Inno3D and Zotac. Now, you might be freaking out about the pricing here, but remember that that does include VAT. According to video cards, they've been hearing a US price of $399 US. So definitely not amazing, but not bad either. We can actually take a look at some of these cards. This is the Gigabyte model. Then we have the Inno3D model, pretty crazy design right there. It does come with 8 gigabytes, just like we had discussed in the past, of GDDR6, so these are coming very soon. Specifically, like video cards actually said, the NDA, as well as I do believe the release, is set for December 2nd, so it's coming very soon. And with that, we are getting new leaks for performance. This time we're looking at 3D Mark's Time Spy and Firestrike, and as you can see, it absolutely does beat the 2080 Super, which is pretty significant because that is basically 2 variants or more down from the 2080 Super. With that said, it does not beat the 2080 Ti, but you can see that it is fairly close. Not only that, but it's even closer to the 3070. So depending on what the pricing ends up being in the final models, the 3060 Ti may honestly be a really great buy. And next up for today, we have some of the first benchmarks on AMD's upcoming Ryzen 5000U, so they're ultra low power mobile variants. And what's pretty interesting is that you can see that they specifically say Cyberpunk. And the reason for that is because AMD is doing something really odd. They're actually choosing to include 2 different architectures that make up their Ryzen 5000U CPUs. Now, this is really annoying, and the reason for that is because they literally skipped their 4000 processors for their desktop variants specifically, at least this was the only real thing that made sense, specifically to bring the architecture together for both their mobile and desktop variants. But the issue with this is that this right here is based on Zen 2. It's basically like a Renoir Plus. So it isn't using their newest Zen 3 architecture. That is specifically for Cyberpunk. Now, obviously with that said, Zen 3 is going to be here, so ultimately it does somewhat put them together, but with the fact that they aren't using the same architecture across the board, it still makes things fairly confusing. Either way, the Zen 3 Cyberpunk is an 8-core, 16-thread part, rumored to be 2.0 GHz base and 4.4 GHz boost. But in this benchmark, we can actually see that it has a 1.9 GHz base, but of course, this is Geekbench, so we aren't 100% sure. Sometimes they can get those frequencies wrong. Either way, as far as score, it does do fairly well. It's significantly faster than the recent leaks we've seen for the 5700U and single-threaded benchmarks, but it's very similar in multi-threaded score. Either way, because we know how well Zen 3 does on desktop, we can about gather what to expect on their mobile variants. And of course, this 20% faster in single-threaded benchmark is really impressive, and let's not forget that we're comparing it to the also next-gen 5700U, so this is not comparing it to Renoir. And next up for today, for those of you who remember, AMD's Smart Access Memory, or SAM, was only set to support Ryzen 5000 CPUs with their 500 series motherboards. Well, it looks like, similar to what we've heard from Nvidia, basically stating that this has nothing to do with proprietary really anything, though AMD did come back and basically state that it does require support from chipsets, from the CPU. They all do have to work together, but they don't necessarily have to be built from the same manufacturer. Either way, with this, you can actually see that WCCF Tech was able to confirm that AMD's Ryzen 5000 CPU will support SAM on their 400 series boards. Now, we don't know when that's going to be. We're actually hearing that that's not really going to come until the already planned January launch of the official firmware updates, though it does seem that your motherboard, if it's a 400 series board, may end up including support for Smart Access Memory, which is pretty sweet because it does give you a decent performance uplift if you have their newest RX 6000 GPUs. And if we go down here, we can actually see that a German YouTuber was already able to include Smart Access Memory on the B450 Steel Legend motherboard. So that is great, just to see more support coming. Of course, if you ended up purchasing a 500 series board specifically for this, that definitely does suck. But at the same time, it isn't officially supported on, I don't believe, any 400 series boards as of right now. And next up for today, if you've been trying to purchase an RTX 3000 card, this is probably going to make you mad. Nvidia recently had their Q3 earnings call, and in it, we can see that their gaming revenue was actually massive at $2.27 billion. But here's the thing, cryptocurrency GPUs is included in that gaming revenue. And according to RBC Capital Markets, the analyst Mitch Stevens, $175 million worth of next-gen GPUs were sold to Ethereum miners. Now, I will say that some outlets are reporting this as Nvidia selling it directly to them rather than them coming in and just purchasing them from like Newegg or anything like that. But when we actually read the quote, it doesn't necessarily sound like it can't be that, but it doesn't guaranteedly say directly. It actually says, for the quarter in review, Nvidia sold at least $175 million worth of new generation GPUs to Ethereum miners, helping the outperformance. So it doesn't actually say directly. Either way, you may be thinking, oh, 175 million, that's basically nothing when we're looking at 2.27 billion. But remember that this 175 million is specifically for new generation GPUs, while the 2.27 billion is basically any revenue they get through the gaming market. So this could have been their 2000 series cards or basically anything. All in all, I would say 175 million is likely a massive chunk of the cards sold. Basically, this sucks. As we know, Bitcoin has been going up significantly. Right now it's at 17,000, so it has gone down a little bit, but it's still at $17,716, which is unbelievable. But at the same time, this is getting a big resurgence in miners as altcoins go up along with Bitcoin. And lastly for today, going back to mobile processors, we actually went over in a story in I believe it was my last video, where I went over the roadmap that WCCF Tech did for their RTX 3000 mobile GPUs. With that said, there's actually a really interesting story that comes out of this. Video Cards has actually stated that they heard that AMD's Cyberpunk laptops were already listed on long-term roadmaps and datasheets with the GeForce RTX 3070 and 3080 graphics cards. Basically, it's looking like Nvidia, or at least laptop makers, are going over to AMD rather than Intel for these upcoming 3000 GPUs. Of course, I have no doubt that Intel will be a part of this, but just like Video Card says, this undoubtedly puts a lot of pressure on Intel. Basically, this is a really big story. So big, in fact, that Notebook Check even did it as their headline. You can see that laptops with Nvidia RTX 3000 GPUs and 5000 APUs to arrive in the first half of 2021. Ultimately, this could end up being yet another huge hit to Intel. Don't forget that Apple has already switched away from Intel CPUs specifically to go to their own, and they're even getting away from x86 architecture to do it, which I have no doubt took them a ton of time to switch everything over from the x86 architecture. So the fact that they were willing to do it really shows how much they aren't happy with Intel. And now Nvidia looks to be counting on AMD for their next-gen GPUs as well. So while that does it for today, is that a huge hit to Intel, or is Nvidia definitely going to be going to Intel very soon as well? But the fact that it at least seems like they're going to AMD first really doesn't look good for the company. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And of course, if you liked the video, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and as always, have a great day.